Good morning and welcome to this final debate. It's a pleasure to introduce the first debate team, and the motion today is this House believes that the genetic engineering of human embryos should be banned. So I look to Madame Feitegui in order to open the... I look to Madame Paraguirre in order to open the case for the proposition.
Hello, good morning. Thank you, Madam President, for having me as one of your speakers. Thank you all for taking the time to come to this debate. It is both an honor and a privilege to speak here today. Please join me in welcoming our distinguished colleagues, whose insight and expertise will enrich our debate and contribute to a comprehensive discussion. Today's motion is the genetic engineering of human embryos should be banned. On the one hand, in the opposition to this statement, we have two very bright girls, Mrs. Diaz as a first speaker, who will start by giving the arguments, and Mrs. Maguregui as a second speaker. On the other hand, on the proposition to this statement, we have a very clever girl, Mrs. Feitegui, who will team up with me in order to defend the idea of banning genetic engineering in human embryos. Before we delve into our first argument, it is important that we understand what the topic is about. Genetic engineering in human embryos involves the manipulation of the genetic material in the embryonic stage. This occurs using biotechnological techniques, and it occurs at the earliest stage of the development. Debates surrounding genetic engineering in human embryos are emblematic of the ethical, scientific, and societal complexities that converge at the forefront of modern biotechnology. The idea of manipulating embryonic material at the earliest stage is fraught with promise and danger, provoking debates about bioethics, medical advances, and the very fabric of human existence. Now, focusing on our arguments, I will start listing the negative impact this procedure can have on the individual and the society as a whole. First, when it comes to the personal effects, genetic engineering creatures will suffer from obsolescence. Devices became obsolete quickly as newer models are released. According to IT experts, computers are secured for about 3 years, and smartphones for about 2. As it occurs with every technological advance, this also could happen to genetically engineered people. The whole gene enhancement of 1 year can become all new several years later. Parents will be obsolete by the standards of the children, and teenagers will be hopelessly outclassed by the younger siblings. This process can be very dehumanizing for the people that undergo it, because it's creating non-human alienated creatures. Genetically engineered people will be alienated from the self, have a confused identity, and no longer feel human, deriving to the human race feeling alienated from the self. Genetically engineered people won't have a sense of being part of the human race, but they will not share enough characteristics in common with any other such creatures, like they belong to any of them either, deriving in a feeling of isolation. People will be alienated even from their children, who will be drastically genetically different, struggling to interconnect with them. Now, when it comes to the impact that it has in the society as a whole, it is important that we highlight the inequalities and social injustices that this could provoke. There are reasonable fears that genetic engineering could exacerbate social inequalities. If the technology becomes available, it might be only accessible to the wealthy, creating a division between genetically modified ones and the ones that cannot afford this process. This can lead to the establishment of a cold social status based on a social pyramid, with those who cannot afford to make themselves tailor-made children with the appearance of a master race and full of customized desirable characteristics will be at the top of the social pyramid, whereas those who cannot afford the process will remain at the bottom and will remain the same, as well as their children and their children's children, who have already become a different race, playing in disadvantage just for economic reasons. Now it falls on me to introduce the first speaker of the opposition. It's my honor to introduce Mrs. Diaz as I said, a very nice girl who is also studying English philology, and she will provide more arguments in favor of genetic engineering of human embryos, bringing a wealth of experience and insight to today's discourse. Once again, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the President, to all our esteemed listeners and participants who will engage in this thought-provoking discussion. For all the reasons mentioned, I urge you to vote in favor of the proposition. Proud to propose. Thank you.
Now I look to Madame Diaz in order to open the case for the opposition.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam President. It's both a great honor and a privilege to talk in this motion today. First, upon me to introduce today's distinguished speakers. Opening the case for the proposition, we have Ms. Iparraguirre and Ms. Saitegui, both incredibly bright students of the University of the Basque Country, whose arguments I really look forward to hear in today's panel. But for now, I'm here to defend why genetic engineering of human embryos, or germline genome editing, as I will call it throughout the motion, should not be banned. Allow me to present my first argument in defense of the merits associated with the practice of genetic engineering. Genetic engineering, as an advanced scientific discipline, possesses a capacity to proactively prevent illnesses, encompassing both genetic disorders and complex maladies that contemporary medicine struggles to forestall or mitigate. In this regard, gene editing could be used to cure genetic diseases such as cystic fibrosis or thalassemia. For those who don't know, thalassemia is a blood disease that the Chinese researchers are working to eliminate. At present, there are no cures for such diseases. However, detractors say that healthy embryos or fetuses could be selected via genetic testing, and this testing is preferable. But such genetic tests require abortion of embryo or embryo destruction, which is an objectionable decision for some. What is more, genetic selection doesn't benefit patients. It's not a cure. It merely brings a different person who is free from disease into existence. Future people would be grateful if the disease is cured, rather than being replaced by a person who's healthier or who's non-disabled. On top of that, for prospective parents known at risk of passing on a serious genetic disease to their children, heritable genome editing may offer potential means of having genetically related children who are not affected by that illness. According to the National Library of Medicine on the article Heritable Genome Editing, thousands of genetically inherited diseases are caused by mutations in single genes. While individually many of these genetically inherited diseases are rare, collectively they affect a sizable fraction of the population. This fraction varies between the 5 and 7%, which is a very high percentage worldwide. The emotional, financial, and other burdens on individual families that result from transmission of such serious disease could be considerable, and for some families they could be potentially alleviated by heritable editing. As National Library of Medicine reported in November 2018 in China, 2 twin girls had been born with modified genes in order to make them HIV immune. Their birth was the result of an experiment. Presently, that's all we can call it, because we are not 100% sure if it's done again it would be successful. This experiment was conducted by He Jiankui with couples in which the males were the HIV carriers. He used CRISPR technology to immunize the babies against the HIV virus. He Jiankui managed to disable the CCR5 gene that enables HIV infection. In the long run, these studies may lead to the development of clinical applications. The academies propose to limit the GGE, which is the germline genome editing, to severe cases of disease of disability where no alternative treatment is possible. It follows that although there are certain contexts in which the germline genome editing could be used in a beneficial way, it should be used within narrow limits of caution, or at least that's what we believe. In the report Human Genome Editing, Science, Ethics and Governance, the American National Academies of Science, Engineering and Medicine have stated that clinical research using germline genome editing in humans should be permitted. In a nutshell, with appropriate legislation, the advantages of genetic modifications through genetic engineering done on human embryos are bound to surpass any potential risks. It is because of this that I urge the House to oppose the motion today. Thank you to the audience for their attention. Thank you again, Madam President. Proud to oppose.
Thank you. I look now to Madame Thaitegi to close the case for the proposition.
First off, thank you, Madam President, for allowing me to be a partaker in this debate today. Thanks to my partner in the proposition, Ms. Ibarraguirre, for exposing her arguments in favour of this motion so clearly. I'll be going through my own arguments shortly. The motion I am defending today, as previously stated by my partner, is that genetic engineering of human embryos should be banned. But what is genetic engineering precisely? Ms. Ibarraguirre clearly stated earlier in the proposition, but the definition can be a little broad. Gene therapy can be included in it as well. We were talking about genetic modification with the intention of enhancing features to make them beyond human capabilities. That said, my first argument will delve into the negative repercussions that this procedure would have. Genetic engineering, when it will be developed, would let us change the attributes, our attributes as a species, as extremely as we please. In the natural world, we have evolution. This process is ever so slow and sloppy. It doesn't have a definite target. It just happens as to accommodate the human race and, for instance, all species, but we're just talking about humans here, to the needs and challenges our environment gives us. This hypothetical genetically modified individuals would have bettered themselves to incomprehensible levels. If we follow Darwinist logic, they would have immense capabilities, second to none, in any sort of challenge, making quote-unquote natural humans far more useless. This raises unanswerable questions, so we have to resort to imagination for the answers. In Aldous Huxley's book, Brave New World, society is divided into 5 social classes. Individuals are grown from embryo state in incubators. They are genetically modified to be capable of executing their societal duties. The best class, the alphas, are innate leaders and superior both physically and psychologically. It just goes down from there up until the pawns and the labor workers of society, who are extremely compromised in that way. In this dystopia does not hit close to home for us, but that's just yet. For years, writers and intellectuals have been toying with the idea of genetic modification and its implications on society. And so far, we can see that there aren't many positive prospects ahead, and it'd be better not to stick around to find out. Once finished with my first argument, I would be going into my second one to defend this motion. And my second argument is about eugenics. Eugenics is the belief that some humans are genetically superior than others, therefore more fit to pass their genetic pool and to the future generations. This is basically selective breeding in humans, which is basically put into practice in various ways. This is a latent problem because it implies that some people are far better than others, which is plain discrimination. The policies of eugenics have historically ranged from seemingly harmless campaigns for advocating for quote-unquote fit individuals to reproduce up until forced sterilization of the oppressed groups. This is not a concept to be toyed with. When looking up eugenics on the internet, I'm just going to mention some related topics that come up. These are dehumanization, heteronormativity, oppression, racism, police brutality, Nazi Germany, white privilege, that's just to name a few. We have to understand the deep importance of this topic. Genetic engineering would open up a brand new door in eugenics. That would leave nothing but questions behind. It would be a new way of trying to justify hatred and bigotry, which is a slippery slope for discrimination. We should all fight against it. That would be the end to my second argument. In summary, today's proposition, led by Ms. Ibarraguirre and myself, stood for the aforementioned arguments, which are these. Firstly, the extreme backfire modifications would have in the genetic engineered individuals. They could become detached from both society and their humanity. Then, the great breach it would form in society. Classes would become way more partitioned. Ability to afford such procedures would fall on the capital of the family. Then, the extreme danger, the potential bettering of some individuals would have in societally. It would lead to a dystopian world. And finally, the danger it poses because it would be used as an institution to justify hatred. Thank you all for your time. I urge the House to consider the aforementioned points when deliberating the motion. Now it falls upon me to present the second part of the opposition, Ms. Maguregui, who will be going against the motion we have been discussing so far in this debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. I look to Madam Maguregui to close the case for the opposition.
Thank you both, Madam President and Ms. Saitegi, for the introduction, and thank you for having me as one of your speakers today. As my partner, Ms. Diaz, has previously stated, in this debate we oppose the idea that genetic engineering of human embryos should be prohibited. Therefore, we defend the notion that the modified genetic embryos can be beneficial for future generations. Here's the main point I want to raise: embracing progress. In the ongoing discourse surrounding genetic modification, a controversial issue emerges regarding the enhancement of a baby's intelligence. According to the MIT Technology Review, a poll conducted in the United States revealed that 83% of interviewees considered the idea of genetically enhanced babies as taking medical advances too far. However, proponents of genetic engineering, including Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom, argue that the pursuit of higher intelligence requires serious consideration. Supporters justify the exploration of genetic modification by emphasizing its ability to unlock unequaled human potential. Nick Brostrom's perspective suggests that even a small number of super-enhanced individuals could be the start of transformative societal changes. These individuals, gifted with heightened creativity and intellect, have the potential to lead groundbreaking discoveries and innovation that benefit humanity as a whole. Designer babies is a colloquial term for human embryos that have been genetically modified, referring to babies whose genetic composition is deliberately chosen to eliminate specific defects or guarantee the presence of particular genes. While the term and the associated concept continue to spark controversy, it is clear that the overall impact of designer babies leans towards positive outcomes. One of the main advantages would be the one mentioned by my opposition partner, which is improving health. When using the genetic modification technology to create a designer baby, the chances of genetic disorders can be reduced. It does not only decrease chances of being affected by certain health conditions, but increases a baby's chances of survival as well. Moreover, the improvement of a baby's intelligence and memory is not far from being a reality. For example, the same twins that were previously mentioned by Ms. Diaz, called Lulu and Nana, reportedly had their genes modified before birth by a Chinese scientific team using the editing tool called CRISPR. Apart from what my partner added, scientists say that the brains of these genetically edited girls may have been changed in ways that enhance cognition and memory. This editing tool was claimed to delete the gene CCR5 from human embryos. As reported in the journal Cell, individuals who naturally lack the CCR5 gene exhibit a faster recovery rate from strokes. Furthermore, those who are deficient in at least one copy of this gene demonstrate greater academic advancement, suggesting a potential association with everyday intelligence. To conclude, all the evidence suggests that a delicate approach is essential for this matter, acknowledging both the benefits and the risks. However, it is important not to overlook scientific advancements of this nature, as they contribute significantly to unlocking the full potential of human evolution. Considering important enhancements in both health and intelligence paves the way for the betterment of future generations and the overall well-being of humanity. It is for these reasons that I urge you to vote in favor of the opposition. Thank you again, Madam President, for allowing me to take part in this debate, and thank you all for listening. Vote to oppose.